Lee Duffy, The Whole of the Moon. That book. Um, by far my most successful in terms of numbers. When the publisher first said, we'll use this for the front cover, I was like, no, guys, you can't be serious. Um, at the time, I wasn't jumping through hoops, but it's that image just became iconic. When you walk in there's 350 Waterstones in Britain. When you see that on the shelves, it kind of stands out from the rest. And at the time, I didn't see it. Obviously, it grew on me over the years, over the 2 or so years. The book has been a huge success. Anyone wants to buy it, it's £12.95 paperback edition. You can buy it on Amazon Kindle for £4.95. And I'm happy to say that it's been turned into audio. I got a lot of, over the years, a lot of people asking for audio. There's a lot of people who haven't got the concentration or just the time to read a book. And I'm happy to say that, it's been quite costly. But Sean Atwood has backed us, so obviously Sean can see that Sean said if your book gets 100 Amazon reviews a year, then, it's a huge success. And I think that now has been out 2 month or 2 year 3 month, and it's got something like 328. Which is it's really done well. The first month that book came out, I won't name them, but one bookshop had 30 stolen. So I don't know what kind of people I'm bringing to the bookshops, but yeah, lots of people. I've even had people like prisons emailing my publishers saying everyone goes crazy for Jamie Boyle books. Almost saying that as if they're surprised that there's thieves in there. But apparently, as soon as the book comes in, it gets stolen. That was from Home House. But the book itself is, the book explains I was 11 when Lee died. It always gets brought up, actually. It's always something that gets shot back at me. How can you write a book on someone when you were 11? Never ever said I did know him. But obviously, I've fathered out people. And I spent a lot of time in London last couple of years, and if you're in Bethnal Green Workmen's Club or places like Stepney, Whitechapel, everyone has a story on the craze. When they met him, when they met them once, and that's what it's a bit like with Middlesbrough. I think you're coming up to 30 years this year, and anyone over the age of 50 in Teesside seems to there's always a story, even if you just met him once. It was a bit like, I think I described it as a JFK moment, because a lot of people in Teesside will remember where and what they were doing when they heard the news that obviously Lee had been killed. I did as well. I was 11. I was going over to play football. I'd never seen him, but I felt like I did know him, because for the last couple of years I just hear this name, or obviously in the last year of his life he was in the papers quite a lot for with the attempts on his life and certain other things. But the book itself, guys, is 30 chapters. I started off, Charles Bronson, or these days Charles Salvador's done the forward. He spent a bit of time with Lee in Hamley prison. Back end of the 80s, and it's got two members of the Duffy family in. Uncle Rod was one, who had a big effect, I suppose, on Lee's life when he was growing up. Certainly influenced him. And there was another one who will remain nameless. But yeah, there's 30 chapters. Some people know him very well. Some were victims. Some were friends. And it all leads me, because if I could have done a book in my own words, but the credibility wouldn't have been there. So what I did was I went to 30 people from the South Bank estate, people who've been in prison with him, club owners, boxing coaches, Um, 30 chapters, and obviously I start off with the book with my reason for doing it, and then you hear 30 people's different sides. Couldn't stand him, loved him, loved him, liked him, all this kind of things. And by the end of it, I finished the book off with 2 chapters in my own words. A lot have said to me, I mean, the chapter in particular, the day the end came, have said that chapter actually alone moved me to tears. It's quite heart wrencher. So it kind of sums it all up. It's quite dramatic, and there's another a full moon summing up. So it has been an absolute massive success. Has it? Yeah, you all know it's been controversial. At times, I've kind of wished I never did it. But yeah, it's done absolute. I mean, and the funny thing is, my publishers, they're based in Pontefract, and they're my financial backers, if you like. So it was easy with them. It was easy doing the books on the Paul Sykes, the boxing books, the Roy Shaw books, the Dominic Negus books. But they actually said to me when I first, because I didn't have any plan on doing the Lee Duffy books until it was an elderly gentleman in Middlesbrough who I'd interviewed for the second Paul Sykes one, and he was quite close to. He was familiar with Paul Sykes, and he's widely known to have been as an elderly gentleman, and people would kind of know him as maybe Lee's mentor, if you like. He was a friend of one of Lee's, maybe certainly close friends, and I kind of half-heartedly put it to him. I said, "What do you think about a Lee Duffy book?" And he kind of paused and he looked at me for a bit, and he was like, "Well, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it right." And there was people who said, "Don't do it." People who said, "You've got to do it." I've spoken to certain people. One guy in particular was like, "I'd rather you didn't." And I said, "No, so that's me not doing to do it." And a few days later, someone sat me down and said, "Someone's going to do it anyway. So it might as well be you from Middlesbrough." And there's a lot of stuff I did keep out of the book, out of respect. A lot of people won't believe that, but I did. And there's people around me that are aware of that, certain things that the police had told me, and I could have used. I had it on record, so I did try to do the book in the greatest of respect, and I hope that shines out in the book. But yeah, it's out, and it's not everyone's cup of tea. You can't be everyone's cup of tea, otherwise you'd be a mug. But yeah, there's a lot of people being against it. There's a lot of people who have just thought it's been amazing. Waterstones in Middlesbrough, they've been there now about 20 years, 21 year maybe, and they said it's the most successful book ever by a local author. So I think that kind of tells you all you need to know. And as I said, I didn't have any plans, and I'd done the 2 Paul Sykes ones, and at first I thought it was too close to home. Maybe it was, I mean, I am completely done with doing the Teesside books now. Paul Venice will be my last one. But it's brought out highly mixed emotions. But listen, I wasn't about. Always get a shot about me. I wasn't about, and you're right, I wasn't. I was if actual facts of the matter were, I was in primary school. I was 11-year-old, but just you can either bury your head and do the ostrich trick, which I think a lot of people would prefer, or you can say, well, it's actually once upon a time in Middlesbrough, this did happen. This young kid was about. I say young kid because he was only 26. He was just a kid. I'm nearly old enough to be his dad now, so although his time on this earth was very brief, chaotic, eventful, if you like, so many different words that you could use. In that brief time he was on Teesside soil, he written his name in folklore, and here we are now, like 30 years on. I'm ready to just, do the next things now. That Liverpool's, your London's, your Essexes, and yeah, it's been, it's. I was always aware of the story because I grew up for most of my life in Middlesbrough. So and I spent a bit of time in boxing gyms when I was young, so that I'd always hear the name, and I thought I knew the story until about 3 years ago when I really walked into the story, and whether you liked him or loved him or despised him or respect all these kind of different things. As I said in the Hole in the Moon documentary, notoriety in itself is a form of success, and success, a lot of people think it's just to do with wealth and money and cars and all this. It's not. It's if you can write your name, it's like many of us will live to 100, and there's a saying, it's something like 60 years after you're dead, everyone on the planet who's with you will be gone. Now, unless you're John Lennon or Kurt Cobain or someone, where you've really written your name in as some kind of lasting legacy, and regardless of what his was, if he'd have been here, would have been what, 50, 55, so it's not even really that old, but he did, there's a lot of people, you've only got to look at the Teesside Live, or if you type in hashtag Lee Duffy on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it brings out a lot of negativity in people, and then they'll lash out at the people who've published the book, done the documentary, and ultimately what you've got to remember is, for what he did or what he didn't do, or what, he was a kid at 26, and the people who were against the story and he was horrible, and at the end of the day, he paid the ultimate price with his life, having this kind of legacy, if you like, this kind of folklore, mythical, I've just did I did a foreword for Paul Venice's book on a very well-known guy in South Bank, and he said to me, even though I grew up on the back of Lee Duffy's death, it's like he'd never went. It's like he was still here. Even in 93, 94, 95, these young kids would hang on the street corners and they'd all be talking about Lee Duffy. They'd all go on the mountain on the BMXs to stare at the grave in Essen Cemetery. And that is a kind of form of success, whatever you want to call it. It's a lasting imprint in society, and obviously, in Middlesbrough, there's lots of things that would represent Middlesbrough: the smog, Parmos, Captain Cook, Chubby Brown, Chris Rea, and every town has one. Obviously the London with the Craze, Wakefield's Paul Sykes, Arthur Thompson, Glasgow, Hartlepool, I suppose they've got the canoeist who went missing, John Darby, I think it was called. And in Middlesbrough, forevermore will be that man, that figure. I don't think Teesside will ever see a criminal like him again. And I spoke to one of the police officers. I spoke to 4, and 2 I can mention. Yeah, 2 didn't want to be named. And they said, even though we were on the case, on his trail, if you like, in like 1988, 1990, 1991, he said, if he'd have lived to have been like 95, 96, he said, police technology changed so much. Science got better, and some of the things he got away with, even if he'd have lived maybe 4 or 5 years, he wouldn't have. And when now we're in the 21st century, you get 5 years for carrying a gun without a bullet. So, and there's cameras on every corner. So, yeah, I think he'd have literally been, was it like pub watch and all this kind of stuff? And I think society wouldn't have stood for it as much. He'd have just literally been forced out of the town, barred from, Paul Sykes had it. And I think that's what would have happened. Or if Lee Duffy was around today, I think it would have been far more kind of, police technology surveillance is much. The policeman said to me, he said we didn't have him on surveillance. These days we would have done, because a lot of the things were happening in South Bank. They had their own police station, and Middlesbrough and South Bank, they couldn't put them together. Obviously these days, um, all police forces in Britain are linked. But yeah, that's the book, guys. I've had my critics, I've had my trolls. Yeah, I'm surprised I don't wake up every day with lots of offers to be the pantomime villain in Teesside. But yeah, listen, the book's out, and it was interesting. It really, really was. And I say this, I would have did the Paul Sykes books for free, and if someone said to me, the only way you can do that book is for free, I would have actually. It was really interesting, and that's not me glamorizing and saying, oh well, he was this, because if anyone's read the book, it's not a Lee Duffy fan club, and it's not a book that slates a man who's no longer here to defend himself. I was 11 when he died. Listen, my opinion is irrelevant. I didn't have one. I didn't know him. So what people said in it, I had no bearings on it, whether they liked him or whether they hated him. That book captures 30 people's stories. Yes, I started at the beginning and I finished on the end, but there's 30 mixed emotions in there, and the book is out. It's out on Kindle, it's out on paperback, it's out on now audio, thanks to Sean Atwood. And yeah, it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all negative. It was really interesting, to the one thing, yeah, I couldn't help at the end though, because obviously I spent a lot of time with people, recorded them, sat with them, and at the end, you because you're with them, it's only at the end when you put them together and you read it and you think, wow, how could. And I think this is the most unique story with this is the most unique point, in my opinion, for the Lee Duffy story. Was he was a kid, and he kind of caused all this much razzmatazz, whatever you want to call it. He did it in like a couple of years, in a time when there was no social media, and back in 1990, 1991, 50% of the population in the country probably only had a landline. And I spoke to like Dominic Negus. I did a book with him, and he was a doorman in Essex in about 1990 or 1991. And someone come up to him on a door in London or the East End or something, and was like threatened him with the name Lee Duffy. And I was, and it's like, yeah, it's he literally had a brand. He knew what he was doing. Obviously, he lived through the Mike Tyson era of, Tyson would beat many people before they got in the ring, and he was the name Lee Duffy. People heard of the name, the rep. He would turn up at 6'4", hair combed back like Dracula, flat nose. And he really, really looked the part. You didn't have to read the small print to see what he was. But yeah, that's my take on the Hall of the Moon, guys. Thousands and thousands of people have read it. It's the back of it. If you click on below, the links are available to buy. And it was listen, it's not nice, some of the backlash that you get from doing projects like that, but it was certainly, there's a saying, a boat is safer on the bay, but it's not what a boat's built for. And writing books, I could write 100 boxing books, and is anyone really interested in listening to boxers? So I've had a nice camp and all this, and are people more interested in the true crime genre when there's people are far more interested in your Roy Shaws, your Dominic Negus, your Lee Duffys, your Paul Sykes. What made a person like that? And I think overall, one of the things I wanted to do to achieve before I started the book, I wanted the readers to understand. People think they've heard of him, Lee Duffy, 1990, 1991. They saw what he looked like. But why? What made him become the way he was? And when you read the book and you listen to like childhood friends talking about how he was bullied, how his family life was, it kind of builds up a picture. Then he went to school, and then he become this young lion. Started working on the doors and built up a name which I think Teesside, the whole of Middlesbrough, will never see ever again. And he be all are almost now. He's been dead a lot longer than he's been alive, and it seems to be now, even though I'm trying to move on to the other books like your Essex, your Londons, your Liverpools. Every single day I'm like, right, well, that's done now, and I'm getting people just inboxing me, inboxing my publishers, and it just seems to be greatly that this story of this young lad that once upon a time in Middlesbrough. I say once upon a time because that's it's often referred to as fairy tales or tall stories, and the thing about Lee Duffy, or the life and times of Lee Duffy, it certainly was no fairy tale. It was a story that very much happened, and it happened in Teesside all them years ago. So thank you so much for listening to me, guys. That was just my take on why I did it. I didn't have any intentions of doing it. I thought, yeah, it's a bit too close, and it was when I interviewed a couple of people and said, do it. And some days I probably wish I never, but it's it's certainly, I'll just put it this way, it's been my absolute most successful by a country mile, and that's even above things like your household names like your Roy Shaws and your Paul Sykes. Obviously the Sykes projects that will get bigger next year, because there's going to be a film and a documentary waiting in the bay, £2 million. But yeah, and I think, although I'm done with it now, I really wouldn't be surprised to see the likes of your Guy Ritchie's come forward, or as I said the other day, I can really, and I think people will come forward. They'll do their books, but it's a fascinating insight on which ultimately was a tragic, harrowing tale, very, very sad. There's no glory in pushing up cemeteries, pushing up daisies in a cemetery, dying before your prime, But the book, it's been successful, and The Hole of the Moon, the song, we use that as a vehicle, if you like. And I've just finished Paul Venice's book, and he said, I think he said something like, that song, it's not like a national anthem. It's like what was it he said? It said it's a fucking anthem in South Bank, and one guy said something, and I thought this really sums it up quite well. He said, you wouldn't go to Memphis, Tennessee, Graceland, and not talk about Elvis, and you wouldn't go to South Bank in Middlesbrough and not talk about Lee Duffy, and that was a proper South Banker. And although I grew up 3 miles away from South Bank, I'm still learning more, and I've spoke to a few people, which Paul Venice will be narrating in his book, A Very South Bank Story. And there's so many mixed emotions, but yeah, it's I don't think you'll ever see the likes of him ever again. And even the police said that as well. Detective Brian Leonard, he said that, he said, Duffy, there'll never be another Duffy. He was a one-off. So yeah, The Hole of the Moon, guys. You can buy it from Amazon, eBay, Waterstones. And let me know your thoughts on it. Thank you so much for your interest, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. God bless. Thank you.